All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. More news today as we look forward to the last two games of the 2025 NFL regular season. Got a lot of people in the comments section not agreeing with what I said yesterday. We'll talk about that, of course. But let's get things started as we always do on this channel with a little stat of the day, a little palate cleanser, if you will. And I want to pull up this post and this screenshot that I put together courtesy of overthecap.com. And this is sort of the theme of today's show. It's reacting to new data points, changing your mind based on available data and information in new context. So over the past, really couple weeks, I've been thinking about the Cowboys' defensive tackle position of the future and what they should do, because they've obviously got a lot of resources at that position with Osa Odighizuwa, Kenny Clark, and Quinnen Williams, of course. And Kenny Clark having a north of $20 million cap hit over the next two seasons, 26 and 27, and especially with the other holes on this roster, I said, listen, nothing against Kenny Clark as a player. I like him as a player, but is it worth cutting him to free up that $20 million in cap space and going out and getting more cornerback help or something like that? And I think that's a real argument, it's a real debate. And considering, who they already have at defensive tackle, Solomon Thomas, Perry, and Winfrey as depth pieces, Quinnen Williams and Osa Odighizuwa as your two starters, are they too top heavy at that one position? Well, this is what I wrote on X after doing some research. I said yesterday I thought it may be worth releasing Kenny Clark for cap space, or for cap purposes, to free up $21 million in cap space. But then I looked at the cornerbacks available around that APY, just as many misses as hits, if not more. Cornerback is just too tough to evaluate, it seems, or too dependent on pass rush. And you can see the list of cornerbacks there that are around really 21 to 16 million, technically 20.25 to 16 million in APY. And it goes from a lot of good players on the list, but a lot of questionable players, right? Humphrey, there's Diggs, there's Lattimore, Campbell's had a rough year. L'Jarius Sneed for the Titans has not lived up to his contract. Jalen Johnson's been hurt. Byron Murphy hasn't lived up to his contract either. Neither has DJ Reed for the Detroit Lions. So there's, again, a lot of misses on this list. And so I originally came into this sort of last couple week period thinking about Kenny Clark, saying, is it worth letting him go to maybe go get a veteran corner in free agency to kind of shore up the secondary a little bit? And I've kind of changed my mind on that, looking at the similar kind of players that you would be getting for that APY. And listen, it seems to be 50-50 at best, getting a competent, healthy corner. And so at this point, I'd say, listen, maybe go more pass rush help, or maybe it's worth keeping Kenny Clark, because I don't think there's anything better on the other side if you go to the cornerback position in free agency, or at least it's risky if you go that route for sure. And with that in mind, let's get into the news here. This is courtesy of Patrick Walker at Voice of the Star, who is a great follow. This is great news coming out of the game. So for anyone who forgot this, Ryan Flournoy, who's obviously had a breakout campaign, boy oh boy, has he been a revelation as a wide receiver 3 for the Cowboys. Had that cheap shot from Perryman from the Los Angeles Chargers. Perryman has been suspended for that cheap shot, and he had a serious sounding knee injury, according to himself and the Cowboys, during the game and right after the game. Now, I wasn't big on covering it because I'm not a big overreaction to immediate feedback to injuries, just because you want to wait for the MRIs, you want to wait for the detailed diagnostics, but it felt like it was really bad, which is going to be a real disappointment. Like, oh my goodness, this is just it's a cheap shot to lose a guy on a serious knee injury for obviously the rest of this season, but probably, the first half of 2026 as well, for a breakout kind of star, a key player on this offense. Good news on that front. Ryan Flournoy participated in practice. Again, it was sort of a walkthrough deal, so it's not exactly full padded practice. Dodged a major injury. I think that's been validated by pretty much every single report out of the Cowboys camp, saying, listen, we thought it was bad. Turns out it was just a strain. He wants to play this Thursday. He wants to play the rest of the season. I mean, he's excited, as he should be. He's had a really good season, kind of coming out of the woodwork. 2 100-yard days, another touchdown against the Chargers, had a second one called back on a penalty. He's playing good football, right? That's undeniable. And this is great news when it comes to Flournoy's, injury situation, whether he plays Thursday or not. I think the fact that he avoided something major is big, because he's been one of these bright spots. And this was a big question mark coming into the season, was who was going to be that wide receiver 3. Now, I was a big Kevontae Turpin guy. I was like, listen, this is the Weapon X. Ferguson's your tight end. You got Lamb and Pickens on the outside. Turpin's your Weapon X in the slot. Your wide receiver 3, who's going to create all kinds of matchup nightmares. He's going to get one-on-one with safeties, maybe some third corners, and he's going to generate big plays. And he hasn't done that, right? He's had, I think, the one catch and run, I think, against Philadelphia, which was a good play. But over, outside of that, it's been he play here, play there, but it's been really not a lot of nothing for Turpin, if we're being totally honest, all things considered. No, he hasn't been like a total disaster, right? But it's just hasn't been what we expected, at least not what I expected, working through training camp in the offseason. I think Shawnee and Clayton Adams all through training camp were really excited about using Turpin to create some of those offensive explosive plays, and he just hasn't for the majority of the season. And now it seems like he's sort of lost that wide receiver 3 role in terms of getting more snaps to Flournoy. And listen, that's obviously good for Flournoy. He stepped up, beat out Tolbert. Tolbert has been benched, obviously, at this point, unlikely to come back for the Cowboys. Mingo has been obviously not doing much at all for Dallas. So it's clear Flournoy has taken that wide receiver 3 position, and he's become a really good player. Again, he's one of these steals, these draft steals, who kind of works his way, doing things the right way. So the fact that he avoided injury there is a really good sign. I mean, you can see the injury list on the screen there in front of you. I'm not a big believer in working through the list, especially on a short week, but it just sucks with these short weeks. The NFL needs to get away with this. I'm sorry. I'm done with Thursday Night Football. I understand Thanksgiving tradition. I get it, right? But this isn't, I mean, it's not just with the Cowboys. It's with everybody. You look at every single team that just played Sunday or Saturday, and they got to play on Thursday a few days later, this late in the season. Everybody's beat up. Everyone's really sore and mashed up. I mean, do you want this from the NFL's perspective? And the reality is, and the NFL gets this, they're like, listen, we can throw out whatever product we want and 15 million people will watch it, right? So that's one of the best ratings you're ever going to get from any live sports show, whether it's, NBA, baseball. They can't even compete with that in terms of big primetime games from their sports. So the NFL is like, we'll just roll out the footballs. It doesn't matter who plays, who's available, who's hurt, who's not. But the reality is player safety is becoming an issue, and I think the NFL, they're not going to, but they need to do something. I mean, it's just, you look at every team's injury report, and it's just a bunch of guys that are really beat up at the end of the year that just, I mean, whether they play or not, it's just not good for these players. And these Thursday games late in the season, I understand, maybe you want to get something early in the year to get a little mojo into the season, right? People are excited for football. But after Thanksgiving should be the last Thursday night or Thursday game period of the year. There shouldn't be any Black Friday games. I understand the NFL is trying to take over different avenues, but no more Black Friday games. Thanksgiving's the last Thursday game of the year. That's my opinion anyway. All right, this next report here is probably my favorite report from yesterday. This is courtesy of John Machota over at The Athletic. Cowboys defensive end Jadeveon Clowney, when asked how he stays motivated for the final 2 games, he responded, "What do you mean motivated? They're paying me. That's enough motivation for me. I like money," which is my favorite 3 words I've seen any Dallas Cowboy mention probably in, probably my lifetime. I like money. Not just that, I represent more than just the team. I'm playing for more than myself. My family's supporting me. I'm playing for everybody that's been with me from the beginning, and I ain't never quit nothing. Ain't gonna be hard for me to get up and play in no game, do my job. So there's a lot to like here, and I really like Clowney's leadership, because one of the things that can happen with a team is you get what I call the false leaders a little bit. And there are people that, say the right thing. They're the rah-rah guys, but it's like, come on, dude. I mean, no one really believes that, right? And this is where you need to have guys that are honest and direct and just call it as it is and just be truthful. And that can be very effective as well. Like, why are you motivated? Why are you playing? It's like, it's my job. Just like it's the way all of you guys have a job, the way I have a job of going out and doing your job, regardless of, I've worked for a company that, lost a big bid, lost a big contract, but we still had work to do. It was sort of a recompete to get, more work on that contract. And it was a lot of travel. This was earlier in my career. And we lost the bid, we lost the contract, and it was like 6 months left, and we had work to do to finish it out before we handed it off for the new company to take over. And we actually had to go to the new company's facility to basically help train and set them up to take over the contract. I remember my bosses at the time, for the guys that were traveling, and I was one of them, he said, "Listen, you guys are going to be okay. I know it's tough to handle this." And I said, "Well, it's my job. You're paying me, right?" And I said it a little nicer than that, of course, but in my head, that's basically what I was getting across. Like, well, it's, as long as the paycheck clears, this is what I'm doing. Right, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I think most people are like that. And that's what Clowney's like as well, right? And I think that's really important, because this is a job, this is work for these players, and taking pride in your work and doing a good job is just traditional, good, grown man, for lack of a better word, like a better phrase, just stuff. And this is really good from Jadeveon Clowney. I'm glad he's coming out and saying it, phrasing it this way. This is why I like Clowney. He's obviously done some good things for the Cowboys this season. I think the reality is, and this is something where I've kind of adjusted my opinion on Clowney a little bit as the season has progressed, I think what we got from Clowney is more than we could have ever expected. But when you look at, and this is sort of what has happened with Ezra a little bit too, and there's been a few people I've seen on social media, and we've had a few discussions back and forth where people are like, "What happened to Ezra? It seems like he's, not nearly as productive." And I said, listen, he's getting a win. He's getting a pressure. He's getting a quarterback hit, 1 a game, 2 a game. He's getting a few pressures and a half. He's playing solid run defense, right? He's beating the tackle a couple times a half or something like that. He's basically hasn't changed, from a high level perspective. But if you look at the rest of the defensive end room, Sam Williams, right? You look at Houston. You look at, of course, Fowler. Right, they've been doing nothing. Houston has done a little bit. He's done a little bit, but specifically Fowler and Sam Williams have done nothing. And so when you have everybody else doing nothing, it puts a lot of focus on the guys that are actually somewhat competent, like Ezraku, like Clowney. And I think you look at the position Clowney's been in, coming again off the street to start. He's been really good, very reminiscent, I think, of Houston last year for Dallas when they had to bring him off the Lawson, not Houston, excuse me, Carl Lawson off the street essentially to play for them, and he did a lot of good things. Very similar kind of situation there, and credit to him. And listen, I would not mind at all if the Cowboys bring him back, probably post-training camp for 2026. I think he's a good locker room guy. He's obviously not going to be super expensive. All right, this next report here is courtesy of Pro Football Focus. It's their first mock draft, or at least the first one I've seen from Pro Football Focus. They have sort of their data-based analytics approach. But I think the big takeaway here is you can see their names that they have the Cowboys selecting in the first round. They have Arvell Reese, a linebacker, playmaker from Ohio State, falling to number 13. Seems like a drop from Reese, which I would certainly take. And then they have Keldrick Falk, who's a defensive end, who's a better run defender than pass rusher, selected at pick number 21 in the first round for the Dallas Cowboys. And obviously you can look at these two guys and say, are they good fits and not good fits, and the questions there, and that's fine, and that'll be a discussion for the offseason as we get ready for the draft and things like that. But I think the reality is it's come universally accepted across the board, whether it's PFF, whether it's Cowboys fans, whether it's a casual fan, that this front seven is the problem. And this is, again, where I've changed my mind a little bit. I've been thinking and I thought this going into the season, honestly, and it turned out to not be the case. That, with Diggs and Bland being the two anchor corners, eventually they'll get some help back in the form of, Carson and Revels, a young guy, right? They'll be able to survive because they've got two corners and Bland and Diggs that can get the job done. Obviously, Diggs has had his injuries and issues. Bland has had his issues and he's had his injuries. So it hasn't been top-notch performance. But where I've changed my mind is you need the pass rush more than anything else. You need the front seven more than anything else. Because the reality is you just can't play corner without a good pass rush in today's NFL. You just can't. I understand there's some teams with a great secondary and they can lock it down. People say, well, look at the Denver Broncos. That's true. They have, Zach Allen, who is like 43 straight years with 40-plus quarterback hits. They've got Nick Bonito, who's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate as an edge rusher, right? So, again, they've got two stud pass rushers and other guys as well. And so it makes the secondary look a lot better. So it's one of those things where I've kind of changed my tune on this. I've always been a big secondary guy. I said, build up an army of corners. I really like what Bill Belichick used to do in New England. But I think when you look at the modern NFL game, you need to be good in the front seven, right? You look at these personnel packages, it's a lot of, two tight end. It's a lot of, pack everyone in tight. You have to be good in the front seven. Even a team like the Chargers, when they spread people out against Dallas, it was with tight ends on the field. It was with running backs on the field. It wasn't, the old days of 5 wide receivers where you get a lot of that look. You remember that? There used to be days where you play 5 wide receivers or 4 wide receivers on a tight end a lot. The reality is you don't see that as much anymore. Teams are much more inclined to use tight ends because it creates matchup problems because, you got a tight end on a corner that's a size mismatch, or you got a linebacker on a tight end that's a speed mismatch. So teams are big into using tight ends and running backs in personnel packages, which means you got to get linebackers and the big guys on the field, edge rushers on the field, and the Cowboys obviously are lacking them. Sam Williams, Fowler, big disappointments, Williams specifically. I like Houston as a situational backup pass rusher. But more than that, I think it's too much for James Houston, if we're being totally honest. I like Ezraku still. Wouldn't mind bringing back Clowney. But they need playmakers in the front seven. They need guys who can do something. Logan Wilson ain't it, guys. He's just... Listen, I think in the 6th game since I added Logan Wilson, Kenneth Murray, and again, this is PFF, big grain of salt, has graded out higher than Wilson in 4 of the 6 games, which kind of matches the eye test here and it's not like Kenneth Murray has been playing great football, right, obviously. So again, it speaks to the concerns at linebacker. Kenneth Murray obviously has just not been good. Logan Wilson, I think he's still got it from it's one of those things, the mind is willing, but is the body able, right? You watch him play and I'm just like, man, he's just so slow. He never was the most fleet of foot guy to begin with, but he's lost a couple steps. And you know, maybe it's a comfort thing. Maybe he'll pick it up over the final 2 games. I kind of doubt it. I just think, you know, Father Time's undefeated and he's just lost a couple steps. I don't hate the trade because it was worth the risk because of how bad the Cowboys are at linebacker, right? It was an asymmetric risk-reward, 7th-round pick for a guy who could maybe be a competent starter for next year, so you don't have to draft a guy in the 1st round. Again, so I understand the risk-reward there, but the reality was it just didn't work out. And for 7th-round pick, it's okay to take that risk, right? I think you move off with Logan Wilson in the offseason, free up $6.5 million in cap space. And nothing against Wilson. I just think he just lost a step, guys. And it stinks because we don't want to talk about it that way because you look at players that were once good, but it just happens to us all, right? Father Time's undefeated. All right, let's get into a little bit of a controversy I caused with my criticisms of Brian Schottenheimer and some other people in the Cowboys organization. A lot of people in the comments section, I'll get to some of them when we get to the end of the video and we go through the comments here. We're a little upset with what I said about Schottenheimer. And I want to clear up and, you know, maybe debunk a few things here because people are talking about, I said, listen, Schotty owns this team. He owns this defense. It is just as much Schotty's defense as it is Eberflus's, right? And everyone has said in response, well, Eberflus was Jerry Jones's hire. Eberflus was Jerry Jones's hire. And I get that from a technical perspective. And I posted this on X. I got 2 posts that I put on social media here that I want to kind of just use as the backdrop for what I'm going to talk about here. And again, I'm excited to see what you guys say in the comment section. So, you know, full speed ahead. If you continue to disagree with me, put it down there. But anyway, I wrote Eberflus was Jerry's hire, but Schotty took the head coach job knowing that. He knew that, obviously. He could have told Jerry, I won't take the head coach job unless I can pick my DC. But he did it, so he endorsed Flus. He was okay with Eberflus. Now, that doesn't excuse Jerry or Flus, but it doesn't mean Jerry is immune either. It doesn't mean Schotty is immune either, excuse me. And I think that's really important. Schottenheimer didn't get hired to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, didn't get promoted to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys to be 100% accurate without knowing this. He knew Jerry was going to pick a DC. He knew probably it was going to be Eberflus. And he endorsed it. He said, yeah, I'm on board. He could have easily said, sorry, I want to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I need to pick my defensive coordinator. And that would have been perfectly normal. Most coaches would say that. But Schotty didn't because he endorsed Flus or he wanted to make sure he got the head coaching job above all else or whatever it may be. And listen, I think all of us have been there at different points in our careers where we're offered a job or an opportunity and there's some caveat or some restriction that we try and negotiate away. And it's a sticking point, right? Hey, you get the big promotion, but you're going to become a shift manager, but it's 3rd shift. Are you willing to work 3rd shift? And you're going to make that decision. Hey, you're going to get a big promotion, but you got to move. Are you willing to move? Hey, you're going to get the big promotion. Well, can I pick my replacement from my old spot? I really like that team. I really like that project. No, you don't get to choose a replacement. And you got to make that decision. Do you take that opportunity or not? You're not coerced. There's not a gun to your head or anything like that. You have to make that decision. And whatever decision you make, you, of course, obviously endorse that path based on what was put in front of you by your bosses. And that's exactly what Schotty did. He was offered the head coaching job with the Dallas Cowboys with the knowledge that Jerry was going to pick the defensive coordinator, and it was most likely, or he probably even knew with 100% certainty, I would guess, that it was going to be Eberflus, or at least Eberflus was the primary target. And therefore, Schotty endorsed Eberflus hiring. So again, I'm not saying the blame is 100% on Schottenheimer for that, but he deserves some blame because he did endorse Eberflus. And so when a lot of people in the comment section, and I see this all the time, no, it's Flus's defense, it's not Schotty's. Listen, there is some connection there because Schotty endorsed Eberflus's hiring. That's just a fact. And then he has some accountability for that. He deserves some criticism for that, right? And he is stuck with Eberflus every step of the way. Now, he's been making some changes and doing some good things for that, but Schotty, again, endorsed Eberflus through Jerry Jones to be the defensive coordinator, and he deserves a critique. Not as much as Jerry Jones, but certainly a healthy amount. And that's a big reason why I think we should be critical of Schotty for doing something that almost no head coaching candidate would have done. Name a head coaching candidate that would have said, yeah, owner, I'll let you pick the DC for me. The only guy that comes to mind is maybe Wade Phillips, right? 2007, when he became the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys and they kept Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator or hired Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator first. That was a bizarre scenario, right? I mean, that's the only guy I can think of that was even remotely close to this. And that's exactly what Schotty did. And I'm not trying to bury Schotty here. I'm just saying that's what he did. And he deserves some criticism for it. The second part of it is sort of the talent issue that Dallas has defensively. And, I'm very critical of what has happened. Schottenheimer being the head coach. And I said, listen, the buck stops here. You are what you allow. I say that all the time. I feel like, how can you be so critical of Schottenheimer? It's his first year of the team. Don't you know Jimmy Johnson was bad his first year with the Cowboys, or whoever was bad their first year with the team? Here's the important point here, and this is what I wrote. Schotty has been on the Cowboys staff since 2022. He saw the defensive talent degrade. He saw the impact Parsons had covering up a lot of warts. The blame for the defense is 1A, front office, Jerry Jones, of course, and the front office at large, and Eberflus, 1A and 1B, for sure. They're the top two guys. But Schotty gets a little of it because he should have seen this coming. Remember, this isn't Schotty's first year with the team. He didn't show up to Dallas. He didn't show up to work at the Star for the first time in January. He's been with this team since 2022. He's seen the degradation of defensive talent. He's seen Diggs' multiple injuries. Right? He's seen Bland with the injury issues in 24, right? He saw this defense get eviscerated by Green Bay, by Buffalo, by San Francisco, by New Orleans over the past couple seasons, by Philadelphia twice, by Houston, right? Go across the list, right? He's seen all that. He saw the linebacker position completely degrade with talent, right? He's been here. Now, I'm not saying he's not a defensive coach. I get all of that. So he doesn't get the majority of the blame. That, again, is sort of an equal share of Flus and in the front office, Jerry Jones, however you want to qualify that. But he does deserve some of it because he's not a first-time Dallas Cowboy coach. He's been here, right? One of the benefits of bringing in Schotty and promoting him as the head coach was that he's already intertwined with the organization, right? He knows the inner workings. He knows a lot of the personnel. He knows their challenges, right? One of the things when you bring in a new head coach is sometimes they don't know how good or bad it really is, right? And that can be sometimes a positive because it's a clean slate, it's a fresh set of eyes, but can also be a negative because a new coach can come in and say, all right, here are all my ideas, here's everything I want to change, and you get to look at the roster and look at the team, you're like, oh my God, this was even worse than I thought, right? That's kind of how Aaron Glenn, I think, is feeling with the New York Jets right now. The reality is, though, Schotty knew everything about this team, or should have known. He's been here, right? He's been here for 3 years. Right, he's worked under Mike McCarthy. He was there for good times in 22 and for parts of 23. He was there for some bad times in 24 and the end of 23. Right, he's seen front offices. He's seen the free agent cycles. He's seen the draft cycles, and it's been a benefit in some ways for sure. Right, working with Prescott, they've done a lot of good things. Elevating the offense. That's been good for sure. But what he's allowed to occur because he witnessed what we all saw with this defense going back to the end of 23 and all the way through 24 and now almost at the end of 25 was a degradation of talent defensively. And so while he doesn't get the majority of the blame, he does deserve a good chunk of it. And I know a lot of people don't like that. I know a lot of people sit there and say, well, he's not the defensive coordinator and he's a first-year head coach. And I understand there's some excuses built in. I'm not saying he's the number one guy with the blame. That's front office, that's Jerry Jones, that's Eberflus. That's why if you listen to Jones talk recently, he's like he never seen Jones like this because I think he understands it's his fault. He screwed up, royally screwed up since really 2022. And Flus has been really bad. So again, it's front office, it's been Flus and his staff. They deserve the majority of it. But Schotty gets a chunk of it, right? Because he's been here. Right, he's the head coach. The buck stops with him, and he's been here the entire season. Now, or for the last 3 seasons, prior to becoming the head coach this year. Now, as a play caller, he's been good. As an offensive design architect, I think he's been good. I would look at that as an offensive coordinator, that kind of role. I know he's not technically the OC. I would call him B+, A-, right? I think there's some things to improve on, but generally speaking, he's been really good. But when you look at this team as a whole, and as a head coach, you got to look at the entire team. I would say, listen, you are what your record is, and it's not a good football team. And a lot of it's obviously because of the disaster on defense. And if this was his first year with the Star, if he had been with, I don't know, the Kansas City Chiefs for the last 8 years, and he shows up to the Star in January for the first time, I'd be much more forgiving. And if he picked his own DC, right, I would be, much tougher on him too. So I'm actually kind of in a weird way. People are saying I'm very critical of Schotty, and I'm like, I'm actually being lenient because if he had picked his own DC and we'd be seeing this, I'd be much tougher. But I put a lot of the blame on Eberflus. But Schotty did allow that to happen. He endorsed Eberflus, right? He may not have picked him, but he endorsed it. So he doesn't deserve all the blame, but he deserves a chunk of it. And he's been here. He's seen the talent degradation. Now, he's not the GM. He's not in the front office, so he doesn't get the majority of the blame. That's Jerry Jones. That's the front office. But he does get some of it because he's seen here. He's seen what we all saw, what we all knew, right? Every single one of you, me, every single one of the viewers, commenters, we all knew this defensive talent was dropping quickly. Micah Parsons covered up a lot of warts. We saw what they looked like without Parsons in 24. We knew he was a superstar player that basically kept this defense from being 30th and 32nd last year in terms of, or being the worst defense in football. And they finished, around what I think like 29th, 28th before it was all said and done. And that was because of Micah Parsons covering up a lot of issues. And with Parsons gone, there was nothing left to cover up the issues. Now, again, Shawnee's not in the front office. That's on the front office. But he could have said something. He could have done something. He should have seen this coming. And that's why he doesn't get the majority of the blame, but he does deserve some of it. All right. We'll see what people say in the comment section about that. All right. This is an update on the Trayvon Diggs situation. This was reported by Jane Slater, who's been very active with the Diggs drama. She wrote, "Some of you wanted to know how Trayvon Diggs got concussed. It was never that crazy, but the lack of answers made it sound like it was. With his permission, he shared, and here's the video of it." He just got a video of, I'm not going to show the video just because it's like a video of like a TV in like a pool lounge area. He says, "A TV he was trying to install from the ceiling with the pole mount fell on his head. I was trying to be a handyman. He didn't think it was a big deal and didn't need to be addressed, but speculation on the internet went way too far. He said he had some good plays today, but was still adjusting to the game speed. I don't know if he thought this may be his last game at AT&T. He said, yeah. He says he wants to be here, but he said they will discuss his future at the end of the season. On the McConkey touchdown, cover two. Yeah, I mean, it's, the last point there, yeah. I mean, it was, I don't know who was to blame there. My gut feeling is Trayvon Diggs, but there's a lot of people this is just sort of a, it's a tough situation, right? Those zone coverages in that situation, it was a good call for that coverage, and I would say, this is just my personal belief, carry the vertical, right? I know you've got safety help, but carry the vertical. If they complete a 10-yard pass in front of you, they just do it, make them work for it. But I don't know what the call was. I don't know what the game plan was. So, I'll obviously, let that be what that is. When it comes to the concussion story, there's been a lot of people on social media, a lot of content creators, and a lot of people like on the radio, like big Cowboys people, like, I don't buy it. Guys, we got to grow up here. Whether it's true or not, who cares? This is something that happened in the privacy of a grown man, right? We aren't entitled to any of this information. The fact that Trayvon Diggs shared this is much more than he ever needed to. The fact that there's so many people out there that need to know, I'm entitled to know what happened. No, you're not. You're not entitled to the private life of a grown man. That's weird, actually. And I see a lot of grown men, like on these radio shows and on these content creators, this is bogus. I think he's lying. He's covering something up. Why do you care? Why do you need to know what happens in a grown man's private life? That's just weird. Listen, whoever's watching this, whoever's commenting, I don't want to know anything about what happens in your private life behind closed doors, just like you don't want to know anything about mine, right? Because that's what adults are like. Listen, you do you, as long as you're not, the great American way. Listen, man, you stay off my lawn, I'll stay off your lawn kind of thing, right? That's, it is what it is. But there's a lot of people out there that are just weird, and they just feel like they are entitled to know and believe there's some deeper, darker element to the Diggs situation. And whether there is or isn't, who cares? Who cares? He was out for a long time. And the reality is, unless he does something really special over the next 2 weeks, he'll be out of the Dallas Cowboys, be a salary cap casualty cut. And it's an unfortunate end to Trayvon Diggs' career. I mean, injuries, I think, will be the one that did him in when it's all said and done, as it does with so many players, which is a bummer. I mean, Diggs was such a good story in 21 and 22. I mean, it looked like with Parsons and Diggs, the future was going to be bright for so long. But again, it goes back to, just sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes you just don't know how things are going to happen with these players. Injuries happen. You see this with Sean Lee. And listen, I wish nothing but the best for Trayvon Diggs. And I'm glad he at least put some truth out there, some information out there, just because I understand how frustrating. I mean, I haven't been in the situation, obviously, but I can understand how frustrating it must be for Diggs to deal with all this crap and all this speculation. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. It's his own private life. Who cares? People need to be grown-ups and just put it aside and not worry about that kind of thing. All right, this next report is courtesy of Adam Schefter. I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but the NFL has suspended Steelers wide receiver DK Metcalf 2 games for the swipe he took at a fan during Sunday's game in Detroit. Metcalf can still appeal, which he reportedly has, but now he is slated to miss the Steelers' upcoming potential game versus the Browns and potentially their next game against the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, the Steelers on the verge of clinching their division, so missing their top receiver would be potentially massive. My only comment on this was I thought George Pickens was the problem child. I thought George Pickens was the worst human being of all time. That's what the media told me. That's what all the commentators told me. Even the late night guys, right? The guys after the games, right, doing the reviews. They spent a lot of time on George Pickens. What are the Cowboys going to do with Pickens? He's got a problem. He's a locker room issue. Pickens literally slapped the fan or swiped the fan or whatever you want to say about what happened, right? Now, obviously, I don't know what was said between the two, and I'm not going to get into that. It doesn't matter. But the point is the media has narratives they like to establish. DK Metcalf hasn't really gotten the treatment that George Pickens has. I mean, this is 1,000 times worse than anything Pickens has done with the Cowboys, and certainly in his NFL career, if we're being honest. And yet Pickens is treated a lot worse. And I don't like that, right? And obviously I understand it comes with Dallas, it comes with being a Cowboy, but I think the reality is the media is just disgusting with how they treat certain players, specifically Cowboys playmakers, and in this case, George Pickens. And that's why I've been really glad to see throughout the entire process, Schotty, Lamb, Jerry Jones sticking up for Pickens, right? Like being very public and very vocal for their support continuously. Because I think the way they've been treating him and just the unequal, it certainly hasn't been in terms of the negativity towards Pickens and the negativity towards receivers that have made much more, I'll say, damning mistakes like this with DK Metcalf. I think that's really telling. I'm glad the Cowboys have stuck up for their wide receiver because you can see that Metcalf, again, this is inexcusable for a team in the playoff hunt. Even if you weren't in the playoff hunt, this is inexcusable. All right, final report here. This one was kind of funny, just to me. When I listened to it. This is from the DLLS Cowboys X account. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer, what he saw from Trayvon Diggs in his first game back. I thought it was great for him to fly around again, and I think, I talked a little bit about the joy and how much fun he had. He wasn't perfect. None of us were perfect, but it was a good first step. But I know as a whole, you give up too many explosives, and that's on the entire team. So the only point I want to make here is I feel like when he was asked this question, Shotty, every coach has the coach speak, and Shotty's generally a positive guy. But it's almost like he goes through his response, and the more he starts thinking about the defense, the angrier he gets, right? He starts with the positivity in the coach speak, right? Oh, it was great, joy, fun. He wasn't perfect. And then he starts thinking about the defense. Well, none of us were perfect. It was a good first step, but we gave up a lot of explosive plays. Man, we really suck on defense, right? It's one of those things where he's like, he has the positivity, he has the coach speak, and the moment he actually starts thinking and going through like, oh yeah, our defense, it's just a funny thing. You can see his mood shift the more he actually starts thinking about the defense as a whole and the team's performance, which I can understand completely. All right, let's get into the comments here. A lot of spicy comments from yesterday. We'll get started with member comments, and that is my promise to every member. I will address every member comment and address every member comment first, get to non-member comments as time permits. So if you want to make sure your voice always gets heard, become a member. Big shout out to our members, and we'll get started with It's Juma 3231. He writes, this game was a Flus vindication game. The scheme has changed and it still got ran over. The players just aren't great. I disagree with writing off Revel. He's a rookie who has only played football for 1 month in the past year. His judgment will be passed next year. Diggs looked okay, but not great, but I can see why they didn't start him in the Lions or Vikings. I think the offense looked good until Flo went out. Javonte seemed to still be banged up, in my honest opinion, and that 4th and 1 was a game changer. I like the call. We've seen it work before, but their defense wanted it more. The penalties, again, killed the second half drive. Yeah, I agree with the call on 4th and 1. People are like, oh, you need to do something different. Listen, it's worked a bunch for Dallas this season. It just didn't work on that play. And I do think the Flournoy injury, I know it sounds weird, but remember the Chargers in the second half switched to basically a lot of 2 deep shell coverage, that cover 2 look, which basically means your inside receivers and tight ends need to be really efficient, really effective. And the problem is Dallas was moving the football, but they got in those long yardage situations. And again, when you're down, you can't just check it down and be methodical. When you're down 10, for example, and after they gave up that field goal and there's 8 minutes to go in the game, right? Or whatever it was, something around that time. You can't go down the field and go, oh, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, right? You got to really try and be aggressive. And with a 2 deep safety look, you can run the football and crease it. We've seen Dallas do that with Javonte Williams, crease teams in 2-minute situations. Remember the Jets, Washington, Arizona. There's been a lot of games where they've actually ran the ball when teams go really off coverage 2 deep to kind of prevent Pickens and Lambs from going off. And the Cowboys have gashed them on the running game. It just didn't work. And sometimes that just happens. I think your take about Shawnee is unfair. You're comparing him to coaches that have historically had great teams. Vrabel's a fair comparison since he turned around a 4-win team in New England. But look at the franchises. New England is historically a better run organization than Dallas. Shawnee's team is one of the best offenses and the worst defense in the league. Cause of the talent is projected to end 8-1. This team was projected less than 7 wins with Micah before the season. Like Rev, I'll judge him based on his work next year when his team is truly his. No, I listen, obviously a lot there to unpack. I think we'll talk with Revel briefly. I think the issue I have with Chavot and Revel isn't the fact there isn't ups and downs. I would expect ups and downs, right? I think the problem with Revel is that we haven't seen any flashes of anything remarkable, right? Rookies, I understand, especially coming off injuries, there's going to be a lot of volatility. There's going to be, unless you're going to have a rough game or two, you're going to give a big player or two. That's fine. We saw Trayvon Diggs do that. But I want to see some flashes. I want to see wow, that's a beautiful pass deflection. Wow, he locked down the coverage here. Wow, that was an incredible open field tackle, right? There hasn't been any of that with Revel. And the fact that you pair that with really bad, when you look at his film, he just looks really bad in the past 3 games. I mean, really, really bad. And so at a certain point, you got to sit there and say, listen, we're just reacting to the data. And this has sort of been the theme of this episode today, the show today, is we're just reacting to evidence, right? You change your minds and change opinions based on available evidence. In the last 3 games of film, the last 3 games performance from Revel there has been almost no splash plays. There's been nothing really remarkable, or very little, I should say, and a lot of really, really bad. And listen, I'm not rooting for him to struggle. I'm just saying, based on the available evidence, based on the data, right, you got to be able to change your mind. Listen, I was in on Turpin as a slot receiver. Based on the data, Flournoy is 1,000 times better. Right, I let off the show talking about maybe it's time to cut Kenny Clark. And I looked at the numbers of what cornerbacks are getting and maybe what the Cowboys could get at corner. I'm like, a lot of misses there. Maybe it's worth keeping Kenny Clark. Right? You got to be willing to change your mind, guys, based on data and evidence. And you can change your mind a couple times. Right? And right now with Revel, it's been really, really bad. And at a certain point, I'm not saying you cut him. I'm not saying you end his career. But I think if you're the Cowboys, you cannot go into the season, unless he has 2 really good games to finish out the year, thinking, okay, Revel's our guy. He's a star corner on the outside. Because he's put out film the last 3 games that's not worthy of a starting corner in the National Football League. Not close. That's why the Cowboys benched him a little bit for Triquise Bridges, right, against the Chargers for a few series there. Now, I'm not burying the kid. I know he's coming from the injury, and I know this is, basically like training camp for him. And I understand, it may take time. But the reality is you just react to the data. You react to what's in front of you. You react to the performances. I look at Dak Prescott and I say, he's playing great football. He's played great football all season, right? Lamb, Pickens, playing great football all season. I react to the performances. I react to what you've done in the past. And what we can see right now is Revel's just not good. And that doesn't mean he won't get better. But statistically speaking, a lot of good players, generally they start off good. Sometimes, good players start off bad. That happens too. But those are the minority, and that's just the fact. I'm not rooting against Revel. I'm just reacting to the data. I'm reacting to the evidence. That's all I'm doing. Unbiased, just reacting to the evidence. And listen, I was big on Revel. I'm excited to see what this kid can do. Decent first couple games, and then it's kind of fallen off since then dramatically. A lot of concerns there, a lot of red flags. I'm not saying his career is over. Again, we say this for the 1,000th time this episode. I'm just reacting to what's in front of me. Let's see here. This is courtesy of David Dobbins, 5887. An offense with that talent should score more than 17 points. You want to help your bad defense score more, give them better field position. So, yeah, I'm not happy with Schotty either. I hate grading Eberflus with this crap team he has. Revel looked good early, fell off suspiciously fast. I predict a knee cleanup procedure and more rehab. That is my biggest concern with Revel, is either his knee is 100% or there's a lack of confidence there or something like that. Because that's sort of the Jalen Smith thing, right? That is my concern with Revel. If I'm being totally honest, I feel like Revel could be Jalen Smith 2.0, where the talent is there and, oh my goodness, he's got special ability, but there's just something there. And that's my worry, if I'm being totally honest with Revel. I hope that's not the case, of course, but I agree with you. That's something that's lurking in the back of my mind as well. Not worried about Overshown being injury prone. Concussion can happen to anyone. Well, I think when you factor in the other major injuries he had in his career, you start wondering, how much wear and tear can his body take, right? Again, he had injury issues obviously coming into this season, and now he's missing more games with concussion. It becomes one of those things, if you can't get on the field, right, regardless of the reason why, it's like best ability is availability. Sure would have been nice to see Butler, who didn't play thanks to Diggs. Great chance to evaluate Maffa, but Maffa is locked away thanks to Diggs. A lot of sloppy moves and coaching from Schotty, in my honest opinion. Like, comment, subscribe, hype. Thank you, David, as always. I think the offense played well, obviously. I think you got to look at the game. This was a top 10 Chargers defense, one of the best defenses in football, right? They've done a great job on everybody all season long, really, really well coached. They got stopped on a 4th and 1 in the red zone, right? And then so if you look at their possessions over the course of the second half, they punted once, right? And they got stopped on 4th and 1 in the red zone, okay? And then you look at that. After that, they got the football back. They're down 10 with 8 minutes to go. So it becomes basically a do or die down double digits, in the late in the fourth quarter situation. In which case you're trying to pull off at this point a magical comeback. So again, people say, oh, they're shut out in the second half. They got really 2 legit possessions,
and they punted once and got stopped on 4th and 1 at the 20. Now, again, that's not an excuse. I'm just saying that you just operate in a weird environment where you got to play football that way. You can't develop a rhythm. And you can sit there and say you got to score more points. And I get that, right? 17 points is not a great number at all. But this is a really good defense. They move the football. They actually helped out their defense with field position. I think the Chargers were backed up a number of times, right? This was kind of different than the Minnesota-Detroit game, and it really didn't matter, obviously. So I think this is one of those things where this is more of a defensive disaster. I don't blame the play calling by Schotty at all. I think as an OC, architect, play caller, he's been good. You can find little things to critique here and there, but overall, B+ to A-. I'd give him probably a net A- in that department from that side of being the head coach, play caller, the role he's taken on. Let's see here. Jason Grode Austin writes, it seems as if every defensive player this year has underperformed. Even when Overshown was loosed, he hasn't, that I can recall, made any splash plays or even been used to blitz, which has me wondering if maybe this defensive coaching staff has been so bad they haven't set any of the players for success. I just find it odd that every defensive player has underperformed. Thoughts? Well, Ezra, who's a rookie, has done well. Obviously, we only have, of course, his one season. We can't really grade it against any other season. Quinton Williams, since he's arrived, has played really good football. So I think that's sort of he's actually improved based on what he did with the New York Jets earlier this season. So I think there's a little bit of a something there. But I do think you bring up a great point where there's no one on this defense that has really taken a step forward, right? And a lot of people have said they've regressed. And, with the D-line, I take that with a grain of salt because I honestly believe, and this is where I've changed my mind. I said Micah Parsons was worth maybe a win to the Dallas Cowboys, right? Losing Micah Parsons took a win away from the Cowboys. Now I look at this defense and the defensive talent. I'm like, okay, maybe he took away 2. Because this defensive front had so many warts, going back to even last season, that Micah Parsons, as a superstar All-Pro, just created so many opportunities for other players. So I've kind of changed my mind on that. Micah Parsons' stock has gone up in my eyes. Now, I still think the Cowboys ended up with a good trade. I still think things worked out pretty well for their future. I still think that's a good plan, their direction. But I think right now what's really come to the forefront is the lack of talent and just a total degradation of talent. And you pair that with a coaching staff that is struggling defensively, and you get what we're seeing on Sundays. And listen, I've been out on Eberflus the past couple weeks. I think his in-game tactical decision-making has been a disaster. I think from a scheme perspective, people have been screaming for the scheme. It's Jima, commented that, listen, it's not a high-level scheme thing. Obviously, they've changed that up, and there's been no improvement. So it hasn't been a scheme thing. I think it's, it could be how he communicates to the players. It could be getting the players on the same page. It could be in-game play calls, and, of course, talent plays a role as well. So I think, Eberflus deserves a lot of the blame. But the front office, again, 1A and 1B, right? Because we look at the talent on the field. That's the front office puts them there. So those are the 2 attack vectors if you're looking for people to criticize for this Cowboys defense. All right, this next comment is from Milton Harmon, 1458. I think Shawnee has been okay. I think he wanted to get rid of Eberflus but couldn't. I agree with you about how the offense has to play because of the defense. Yeah, I do think that, it changes because of how bad the defense has been. The offense has to adjust how they play in the second half of these games, right? They're either, look at the Chargers against a great example, right? They have to play a certain way. They can't, try and set up plays. They can't be methodical. They got to look at this and say, okay, we've got to score every possession. We've got to, also make sure we don't score too fast because our defense is going to get a stop. So all of that's factoring in to Shoddy's mind and the offensive coaching staff's mind because you got to play complementary football. You saw this from the Chargers, for example. The Cowboys were getting big plays on the Chargers defense. So what does Harbaugh do? He says, okay, go to a soft cover 2, make them drive the football offensively. Let's slow it down and drive the football. We can try and take some big play shots, but let's be more methodical down the stretch here. And that's what they were. Long drives, long time of possession killing drives. And obviously that worked out very well for them. Again, it's playing that complementary football. Every coach does that. Shawnee does it. Harbaugh did it. Everybody does it. And the reality is because of the defensive just disaster, when it gets to the second half of these games, Shoddy and the play calling, the strategy has to change because they gotta react to the situation. You're down 24-17 in the fourth quarter or late third quarter, whatever it was at that point. And it's like, okay, well, listen, field goals ain't going to help us, right? We got to score touchdowns every single time. We cannot settle for field goals because we can't trust our defense to get us, we can't trust our defense at this point to not give up more points. To at least at that point, late third quarter, you're probably thinking, okay, if they've already surrendered 24, they're probably going to give up another 10. They're probably going to get to 34 points. If we're lucky, maybe only 31. Okay, we're at 17. Okay, we need to score now and then maybe score 10 points in the fourth quarter to get this thing to overtime, or maybe win it if we only give, if we get a stop or two and get fortunate. That goes into your mind as a play caller, as a coach, looking at the possession count. And because of the defensive issues, especially in the second half of these games, that's where it really shows up. It changes how you have to call the plays, and it just hurts you offensively. David Dobbins, 5887. Okay, so I guess this is a repeat comment. I apologize, David. I got 2 in there, but I already hit on that one. Let's see here. It's Juma 3231 comes back with another comment. I'm coming back after watching some more content for some of the Dallas media people, and boy, did the Cowboys do a disservice to Chavon Revel and Demo, DeMarvin Overshown. They staked the entire fan base's hope on the success of a rookie cornerback coming off a knee injury and a linebacker coming off his second knee injury in 2 years, and people are upset at the players. We got to be better as fans, man. Well, I don't think anyone's upset at Overshown, are you? I mean, it's a bummer he's hurt. I mean, I've liked Overshown. I know a lot of people like Overshown. I don't think anyone's really upset about his performance. Since he's played, he's been good. He's been a good linebacker. I mean, the splash plays aren't there, but that's more the opportunities presented to him more than Overshown. So I think he's done well. Hopefully he can recover from the concussion and come and finish the season strong. I want to see him play. I think he's a guy that should play just to get more reps, right? Listen, when it comes to Revel, I mean, yeah, expectations were high, and I understand that from that perspective. But listen, this is I like an organization. I like a team that sets high expectations and high standards. The high standards were put on Tyler Booker. Now you can sit there and say, well, Revel had a knee injury and all these concerns. And I get that. But no one was going into, at least I wasn't. I'll just speak for myself. No one was expecting Revel to play, like Booker's played at arguably a Pro Bowl level at guard this season, right? Since day one, pretty much. No one has expected Revel to come in and play at a Pro Bowl level, right? No one sit there and say, oh, you're going to be a star right off the rip. The goal was like, oh, you're going to be better than Kyer Elam, right? You're an upgrade over Kyer Elam, right? For example, you're an upgrade over Triqueze Bridges, for example. And while I think Revel's physical talent, and he's certainly better in terms of effort in the run defense fits and things like that. Kyer Elam was terrible at that. So I think he's better in that department. But I think he's just been really bad. And I think that's been the disappointing aspect, is that he was supposed to be, even with the injury, and they were very careful with him. They took their time, a lot of practices. They didn't rush him back, kind of rotated him in the game, gave him some situations. They really liked him. He was clearly doing good things in practice. Remember, Schotty and this crew, they won't play someone unless they're doing well in practice. They've been very clear about that all season long, right? There's guys like Jaden Blue are perfect examples of this, right? And the reality is they liked what he saw in practice. So I said, listen, we like what he's doing. Let's see what he does. And the reality is it's just not been good. Now, he is not the reason this team is a bad defense. Chavon Revel is not, right? He's played, 6 games at this point? So obviously you can look at the entire season. If he plays the final 2, which he should, he will have missed out on the majority of the season. He'll have played in 8. The Cowboys obviously had 17 games. So he's not the reason this defense was bad, right? Diggs, Bland, Kyer Elam, right? Safety play, defensive ends, Fowler, Sam Williams, Kenneth Murray, right? Those are the guys that, Eberflus, of course, the coaching staff, those are the guys that deserve the brunt of the blame, and they've gotten it, and deservedly so. But there is some, you got to put some criticism on Revel a little bit. I think that's very fair, right? A lot of expectations are put on players with a lot of talent. Booker stepped up. Ezaraku has stepped up. Revel hasn't yet, right? And now listen, I'm still hoping he does. I'm not rooting against him. But we've seen the talent. We saw the talent with Ezaraku like game 3. We saw the talent with Booker game 1, right? We haven't seen it yet with Revel. We haven't seen the flashes. We've seen some bad. I want to see some flashes. He's got 2 games to finish out the season. Maybe he proves me wrong. And again, I'll react to new data. I'll react to new evidence when we see it. All right, this next comment here is courtesy of Art Vanderlei, 6974. Kyle Shanahan's first record was 6-10, so he didn't come out of the gate with anything to write home about either. Yeah, I guess that's fair. That's a good fact check there. Thank you for correcting me on that. The Cowboys' biggest issue was on defense, and Schotty didn't hire the coordinator. But like I already said, right, he endorsed him. He could have said, I'm not taking the head coaching job. No one forced him to take the head coaching job. He could have said, Jerry, I'm not going to be the head coach unless you let me be the defensive coordinator. And he could have easily done that. And he probably should have done that too, if we're being honest. But he didn't. So he does deserve some of the blame. That's just a fact. He doesn't get a free pass. He did endorse Eberflus. That's just a fact. I don't like it, but it is a fact. You can't claim the defensive performance places undue pressure on the offense and not have it apply the performance of the entire team and a coach. We're also leaving out the performance of special teams, which outside of Opry has been noticeably subpar compared to the McCarthy years. I don't know who hired the special teams coach, but I suspect it wasn't Schottenheimer. The bottom line is, until Jones allows the coach to come into Dallas and select his key staff, you can't place the burdens of the team's performance on head coach. The Cowboys have been a model of dysfunction for 30 years because they operate, and this season has exemplified that. Again, Schottenheimer has agency. He could have said, "No, listen, I'm not coming here to be the head coach. I'm not going to take the promotion unless you give me what I want. Unless you let me pick my DC." He could have said that, and he should have, and he didn't. That's just a fact, guys. He's a grown man, obviously, right? He's 51 years old. He's been around the NFL for a long, long time. He's seen a lot of winning, a lot of losing. He's been with Dallas since 2022. He knows how Jerry Jones works. He knows how the Cowboys operate. He knew all of that, right? And he still endorsed Eberflus. He still didn't push back or didn't push back enough. And I think if you asked him today about it, in a private scenario, he'd probably sit there and say, yeah, I should have said, no, I pick my guy or I don't get the job. And listen, I think that's why he deserves some blame. And I think to go otherwise is saying Schottenheimer doesn't have agency, saying he's not a grown man. And that's just not how we operate, guys. That's not how we should, react as adults, as grown men, to say, no, you have no hand in this because your boss said, hey, I want to do this. If you want the promotion, you need to do this. Like, you can sit there and say, no, I'm not going to take the promotion. I'll see you later, right? I'm going to go do something else. Right, or sorry, shake hands, see ya. Happens all the time in these coaching jobs, right? GMs want certain control, coaches want certain control. The owners, GMs don't give it to them. Coaches are like, okay, just not going to work, not a good fit. Anyone hire anybody? And anyone interview anybody? I've interviewed people that want certain things. I'm like, sorry, this isn't a good fit, right? Wish you the best. Like, are you gonna, I've interviewed someone. It's like, listen, man, are you sticking to this? Is this a sort of go no go thing? He's like, yeah, this is really important to me. I'm like, well, sorry, it's a no-go then. I wish you nothing but the best, but it's just not a good fit. Schottenheimer could have said that. Hey, this is a go or no-go for me. And Jerry Jones is like, no, I want Eberflus. Then Schottenheimer could have said, all right, I'm out. Could have easily done that. He has agency. He's a grown man. And we got to hold him accountable to it. All right, Dino LaChaw, 93-97, writes, not as upset about the loss. I don't want Jerry to get a glimpse of hope to keep Eberflus, better draft picks. Packer may lose out equals better draft pick as well. I think if the Jones family does something they hardly do and get aggressive in free agency for a couple of defensive players, it'll help you know exactly what defensive position players to draft. It's easier to get linebacker in free agency. There are many that will be available after the season that are better than what we currently have now. That's not saying much, though, I will say, in terms of better than what they have now. I get your point. That is a very fair point. I would go after Hendrickson without breaking the bank. I would draft a safety and quarterback or higher rated pass rusher. Restructure contracts for Dak, CD, Oso, Williams, Blandford, and Clark to sign Pickens and Javonte. Well, I cut Diggs, steal both Wilsons, K9, Sanborn, and Schoonmaker to also sign another veteran running back cornerback to go along with Hendrickson and a better free agent veteran linebacker. I agree with the most part of those moves. Certainly the restructures for Dak, CD, and Quillen Williams to free up a lot of cap space there. Clark is an interesting one, and Osa. I don't know if you restructure everybody's contract, but I think you definitely have to make a decision with Clark's cap hit, potentially. Maybe a restructure there makes sense. Maybe, I don't like the releasing. I've kind of changed my mind on that, but I'm open to options because he's in terms of his performance and productivity, it's not $20 million a year in cap hit. Guy north of 30 the next 2 seasons, not ideal. This is why Jerry needs a GM, because the end of the season starts a real evaluation of available talent to include coaches, and I do not believe Jerry has a time or the focus to evaluate for the best available without understanding who will be available if he is super focused on his feelings about hiring Eberflus and Schottenheimer, not wanting to be the bad guy to suggest firing Eberflus. A GM should be focused, should constantly be trying to make the team better by searching and installing better talent at all levels. Yeah, I've changed my mind on this, right? I've been saying for a long time that Jerry as a GM, has not been good, but there's been a lot of bad GMs out there. And I do think one of the problems with Jerry, and you've hit on it, is because he's also the owner, it creates this weird dynamic here where he's the guy writing the check and making the decision, so he doesn't have the sole focus on just making the decision and the evaluation. And that can be sometimes a strength, right? Because some GMs may not want to go to their owner if it's like Cincinnati, for example, who's notoriously cheap. If you're the GM of Cincinnati, you don't want to go to the owner and say, hey, I think we need to spend more money, because the Bengals owner usually is like, no, don't want to spend more money. No, it's not going to happen with Jerry Jones because he is the owner, right? He can make that discussion for himself. There is no weird political game to play there. But I do think there's a problem that the lack of focus and the lack of structure when it comes to the Cowboys operate. It's been a real reason why. Again, the front office, that's one of the things I've changed my mind on. The front office deserves a lot more, and obviously Jerry Jones leads that charge, deserves a lot more of the blame than I've given them in the past. Now as I look at their body of work. BMR Collects writes, I don't agree with your criticisms on Schottenheimer. You aren't giving me any any leeway on being a first-year coach. Listening to you talk about him, it sounds like you're talking about a head coach in his third year of 3 consecutive losing seasons. This defense is so atrocious that I honestly don't think McVay or Shanahan could overcome it. This is historically bad defense, and Eberflus was a Jones hire, so what can he do in his first year as a head coach? Seriously. Well, and I responded to you, I think, on YouTube, but my point was he's been here since 2022. Shotty's seen all this. He knows how the Cowboys operate. This isn't a surprise to him. One of the benefits I thought of promoting Schottenheimer is that he would not be, as shocked with any issues that would come up with the Cowboys being the Cowboys, right? And again, people say, well, Jerry's hire was Eberflus, and that's fair. But again, and I've said this 1,000 times, but I'm going to keep hitting it home because it's a fact. Schotty could have said no. He could have said, no, I want to hire my own DC. He didn't, which means he endorsed Eberflus. Again, Eberflus is Jerry's guy, 80%. But Schotty did endorse the hire. He could have said no thanks. He could have said I'm out. Could have drawn a line in the sand. But he didn't. So he deserves that final 20% of blame. It's just a fact. All right, I got more comments to get to today. I want to go through a lot of comments just because there's a lot of interesting things said. Got 2 more here. Blank Venom 7255 writes, I've seen nothing but promise from Revel up until this game. Well, I mean, he was bad against Detroit. He was not great against Minnesota. I mean, there's been nothing but promise. I mean, that's sort of up for debate there, I will say. But anyway, rookies are up and down. Has he been down every game? No, so why take one game and judge so harshly? Everyone more or less knows the defensive coordinator is a lame duck. The DC has been terrible all year. He isn't blind and deaf. He knows where this is going. He's a leader of a squad who doesn't believe in him. There is very little positivity about this defense. I see Revel as something to look forward to with a better DC. Also, why do people get so down over losses like these? Is everyone bipolar these days? At no point this season did I see a playoff caliber team, new staff, low defensive talent. They traded their best player for future considerations. Expectations to me was less than what Vegas line was, and it surprises me. People almost expect this team to beat other teams like the Chargers. Y'all are wild. Well, I never said this was a playoff team. I've said that the entire season. I've been very consistent about that. And I think one of my disappointment was, I think, the optimism for guys like Revel, for example, to say, okay, can he become a star? The way Booker looks good, the way Ezraku looks good. Because I could sit there and say, man, 3 for 3, that's an awesome foundation. And 2 for 3 is still not bad, of course. And I was also big on Shamar James, although, obviously 5th round pick, lower expectations there. But the reality is, he's looked really bad. There's been a lot of bad. And listen, when you look at the film and you break it down, you're like, gee whiz, this is rough. This is really, really rough. And you hope it's a lot of the reasons that you brought up as to why the struggles are there. And I'm rooting for him to turn it around. I really am. But it comes to why do people get down on losses like these? And I wanted to respond to this. So I played college football, as our regular viewers understand. And I just want to people to get what it means to lose a game and what it's like to be a loser and how much it destroys your soul. And again, this is collegiately, not professionally, so probably a little apples to oranges here. But I remember you work all week at practice. You're at the end of the season. You destroyed your body, right? I mean, look at this. Is my dislocated pinky right here, guys, and I've got jacked up fingers for days. Your body's destroyed. I've got a broken bone in my hand that's kind of permanently disfigured in terms of how my joint's going to operate. I left the game with knee injuries. I had back spasms my entire senior year. It was neck stiffness, and I got out okay. There's people that got a lot worse than me, and you're just beat up. You're physically destroyed. You've been going at it all summer long. While your buddies are partying or working through internships, you're at practice. You're in training camp 2 a day. It's destroying your body. Everyone shows up back on campus excited for the new year, and you've already been in practice. You're exhausted, right? You're already beat up, and then you go through each and every week where it's game plan, where it's practice. Sundays you go in after the game. The coaches review the film, tell them how much you suck. You hit a lift, you practice. Right, Monday it's more preparation, more rest your body, but Tuesday you're back at it, right? More lifting, more film, more meetings, practice again. Wednesday you break down the film of practice, you talk about how much you suck, right? Lifts, meetings, practices again. Thursday, again, Friday, your buddies are going out having fun, you want to do some things around town, whatever. Nope, you got practice, you're at the team hotel. Right, you got no time isn't your own, right? And by the way, you're going to class, you're trying to live your life. Or the NFL players, you're trying to spend time with your kids or whatever, right? You're trying to do some things. Saturday, right? Obviously, game day for college, another prep day for the NFL, and then you go out there and you lose 35-10. I got killed a lot in college. And it just sucks. You just go through the entire week, and it's just a miserable experience. It just destroys your soul, and that's a feeling I will never forget. The joy of winning, and about the joy of victory and agony of defeat. I can't begin to describe to you how much being on a losing team and just losing. I've been on winning teams, and how much losing just destroys your soul. It's probably all in your head, but you're like, girls look at you differently, right? Your buddies that aren't players look at you differently. Like, oh, You're a football player? Yeah, I saw that performance. Yikes. Right? It just, whether that's real or not, that's just how you feel. At the same time, you're mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. You got injuries out the wazoo. Like, it's losing is just the worst feeling in the entire world. And that's why one of the things, and even as a fan, it's different. But as a former player, I just can't disconnect from that. I can't begin to describe, I'm probably not even doing it justice, what it feels like to lose. After you put in so much time and so much effort and you sacrifice so much and then you still lose. It just destroys who you are. You start lacking confidence in everything. Well, maybe I suck as a football player. You're in the top 1% in the country. In the NFL, you're top like 0.001%. And you're looking around like, do I suck? Am I just like the worst person ever? Losing is terrible. Losing is just the worst feeling. And that's just something that has never left me and never will. And that's why I take losing as a fan probably harder than a lot of other fans, because it reminds me, it hits me of those losses as a player where it's like, ugh. Don't wish that on anyone. All right, Stephen Vanover writes, great channel, love the content. If I may, here's my rant on It's the Talent. All season long, we discuss the D issues and give reasons. We name the talent, the scheme, the tactics, the injuries, and injuries equals fate. Tactics equals game day coaching. Flus, scheme equals defensive coordinator. Flus and whoever hired him, i.e. Jerry. Talent equals Jerry Jones, but he is never named as a problem. Rather, he spends time pointing the finger everywhere, but where it belongs at himself. At the end of the day, no coach was going to make this unit look good because the talent is subpar. As Nick stated, many of the guys are F- players, so while everyone is getting focused on who the next defensive coordinator will be, in truth, it won't matter unless some things are done differently in the front office. The front office is Jerry's domain. It is Jerry's responsibility. It is Jerry. Yeah, I come around on this. 100%. Like, they're the guys that said, yeah, we can use Sam Williams and Fowler to generate pressure, right? The front office was the guys that rolled out this roster. Listen, if this was a random GM, the way another team has a GM, we'd be calling for his firing, right? And I know a lot of people are critical of Jerry Jones for the hiring of Eberflus, but I want to shift the focus to the front office. I think that is the problem. And I think obviously the talent on the field is a huge problem, but the front office are the people that acquire that talent. Now, I do think Eberflus is a huge problem as well. I think there's, you can argue which is more, but I do think the talent is the biggest problem. The players out there are the biggest problem. And that goes to Jerry Jones in the front office. This is where I changed my mind on this 100%. It needs to be called out that way instead of code wording around saying it's the talent when that means it's the Dallas Cowboys are deficient in the GM department. Thank you, Jerry Jones, for another year of 500 ball. I don't want a team that is the most valuable in sports. Jerry making bank gets me jack. I want a winner. I want playoff victories. I want another Lombardi. GM Jerry Jones is the one constant over the last almost 30 years. Not the coaches, not the weather, not the voodoo, not the fate. It's an egotistical owner who can't get out of his own way that is driving this pain train. The offense would be so much fun to watch, as Nick pointed out, if they did not have to play focused on what the defense cannot give them. Hats off to that side of the ball. Yeah, that's another thing as a player. I will say this. I've been on teams, and I was an offensive player, offensive lineman in the day, where we were really good on offense and really bad on defense and vice versa. And I can't tell you how much it just changes you if you're a good offensive player and your defense can't stop anybody. It does wear you down over the course of a game. Because you're like, guys, can we just get one stop, please? I mean, I've lost games 59-58, where you're like, what the heck is going on? I've also been on bad offenses and you lose games 13-10, and you're like, sorry guys, I don't know what the heck's wrong with us, right? So it does wear on you as a team for sure. Edit, I wrote the rant before Nick covered the Jerry disappointed tweet. Admittedly, it's the first time I've ever seen Jerry even mused about himself. However, I've not seen an effect on how this topic is discussed. Instead, I heard / listen to immediate pivots to the coaching side. The spin continues as Jerry files continue to look elsewhere when the core cause is named Jones. Jerry needs to step aside. We, Cowboys Nation, need to be calling for that instead of another DC we fire the following season. Yeah, I think we can call for both. I think there's a good middle ground there. I think there's a new defensive coordinator necessary, preferably Schotty taking control of the operation this time, as he should have when he was first hired. But I do think we got to look at the general manager and the front office as a whole. Jerry Jones being the leader of the front office. Remember, I said Schotty deserves a lot of the blame, not all of it, but a chunk of it, for the performance of this team as a whole, because he's the head coach. He's the guy in charge of the product on the field on Sundays. So regardless of what happens, good or bad, he's going to get credit or blame. Jerry Jones, as the GM, he is going to get credit or blame with the talent level of this team. The defensive talent is a disaster level, and he needs to be blamed for that. And I've come around 100% on this. I've done a 180 on this. I've been saying, listen, I think as a GM, if you look at the results long term, they've been okay. But we've seen the degradation of talent, and they just haven't done a good job responding to it. Now, the good news is there's flexibility for the future, right? They've got the extra first-round pick, and they've got some options going forward. So that's the good news. That's the positive side. And then I think is where you can give some credit to the front office, where at least they're not like backed into a corner, right? They're at least not, in a situation where, okay, we got no plan to build for the future, and that's a mediocre team. So I will say that's the good news. But here's the bad news: is do you trust them to get it done correctly? And that's going to be the issue this offseason. That's going to be the real question, right? Because listen, the last time the Cowboys had 2 first-round picks, I believe, was Bill Parcells. They crushed it, right? Now, was that Parcells or was that Jerry Jones? I think that's up for debate, and I think it's going to be a big part of what the Cowboys have to do this offseason. Now, let's give credit to the front office. They did pull the trigger on George Pickens. A-plus work. Javonte Williams was a great find. A-plus work, for sure. Credit where credit is due. Booker and Ezra, great picks. So, again, it's not like they've been like the worst GM of all time. It's not like they're the worst front office of all time. But the problem is clearly just the total degradation of talent on that side of football collectively goes to the front office. The problem with Eberflus is that he took, instead of making this defense the 25th in football, like San Francisco with Saleh with their injuries, right? He's made them the 32nd team in football. And that is where Eberflus deserves the blame, and he should get it. And again, Schotty, for endorsing Eberflus, deserves a piece of the blame as well. But it begins and ends with the front office, and I've come around on this, right? Right now, the front office is the problem with this team. And, of course, that's led by Jerry Jones. All right, that's the comments for today. Longer episode, but I just want to get to the comments because there's a lot of people that were not very happy with me being critical of Schotty. And listen, the point here is I react to the evidence in front of me, guys. That's just what I do, right? And I just react to these data points. I react to everything that happens, obviously the practices, but the games and everything like that. I say, listen, let's see what can happen here. And listen, when things are going well and players are playing well, I'll react to that. But things go bad, I'll react to that as well. And I think that's what we should do. We should not become married to our beliefs. We should not become married to our opinions because they're just opinions, right? And we can have, analysis that we do. I do it all the time. Listen, I've done this on myself as a player, right? When I played, if you graded me out as a player, as a sophomore or as a junior or whatever it was in college, completely different grades because I changed as a player, good and bad in some respects, right? So that's just how we do. We react to data. That's how we improve as fans and people and just viewers of football. We don't become entrenched in an opinion. Schotty does a really good thing for a month. That means he's a great coach. Not necessarily. We'll see what happens after that. Likewise, if Schotty has a really bad month, doesn't mean he's a bad coach. Not necessarily. Eberflus was like I said early on in the season. Listen, let's give him time. Right? New DC, new year, Michael Parsons trade. Let's see if he can adjust. And he just hasn't. End game tactically has been bad. Right? And he deserves a blame for that. I've been a guy that said early on, I said, well, let's see what Jerry Jones has done. And I think the trade for Quentin Williams was a good job, 100%. But the overall talent level is bad. So I sit there and say, you've hit some good trades, you've hit some good moves. Because of that, I'm hopeful maybe you can get it right in the offseason. And he's said some things to kind of indicate they might, right? So again, positivity I think should still be there. But I think if you look at the overall body of work, the way the front offense has just degraded the talent on this defense has just been a disaster. And I think a lot of the blame goes to them. But that's today's show, guys. Obviously, it is Christmas week, exciting time. I'll be here every day. I'll have a special Christmas Day episode. It'll be like Thanksgiving. It'll be a little shorter. So obviously, hope to see you guys tune into that, or maybe not. Maybe you should spend the time with your families. But if you're looking for something to do while you're waiting for jolly old Saint Nick to make his rounds, you can listen to this jolly, slightly younger, not very saintly at all, Nick. Give some Christmas thoughts. But I will be here every single day, of course, starting with tomorrow, Christmas Eve. And I'll be here, obviously, for the foreseeable future, giving you the Cowboys news and Cowboys updates as I see it. Thank you guys, as always, for chopping up in the comment section. Be as mean to me as you want. Hate when I say, love what I say. I love the engagement, guys. I love talking with you guys. That's why I do this show. Right? If no one responded in the comment section, I would lose interest very quickly. But I love doing this because of what you guys do, and I greatly appreciate it, as always. But until tomorrow, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.